when people say, oh, you're competing with jobs with real models, and it's not really true. Whether or not Shudu takes the job, that client is generally going to hire a virtual influencer. One of the biggest issues with AI is consistency. Brands, they want to own that IP. And owning the IP of a completely AI generated character is actually quite difficult. Shudu is a love letter to people that have inspired me throughout my life. I had something to say and I had a vision, and not following that was destroying me.
Today, we're excited to welcome Cameron Wilson, the pioneering founder and CEO of The Digitals, the world's first all-digital model agency. Cameron transformed the fashion industry in 2017 with the creation of Shuru, the first digital supermodel. In 2018, Rihanna's Fenty Beauty reposted an image of Shuru, leading, of course, to widespread media recognition, including features in Harper's Bazaar and a groundbreaking 3D editorial for Women's Wear Daily. The Digitals continue to innovate, introducing more diverse digital models and partnerships with luxury brands like Balmain, consolidating the start of a new era in fashion. Today, we'll explore the cutting-edge world of digital models and discuss the transformative impact of Gen AI on the industry. Cameron, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. And Cameron, I would like to start by going a little bit back in time and asking you about your childhood. How do you grew up, and do you think was there something in there, a moment or a situation that brought you to where you are today and who you are today?
Well, I grew up in a hair salon. Both my parents were hairdressers. So I was surrounded by beauty and surrounded by, fabulous personalities. I don't know if you've ever seen hairdressers, but they're usually a bit flamboyant. So my mom and dad, they owned their own hair salons, and I was really introduced to the kind of the power of beauty at a very young age, how having your hair a certain way or can really enhance someone's confidence and enhance the way that they look. So I always wanted to be a part of the beauty industry. And I always really, really looked up to my mom in general. I thought she was really just so beautiful. I always wanted to be like her. So it was an industry that I knew I wanted to be a part of from a young age. However, when I was at school, I was actually, very interested in science. So, like a lot of young people, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I know probably a million people say that, but I actually went and did some work experience in a lab and um,
Really?
experienced the day-to-day life of what that could be like. And it was extremely eye-opening. I found that it just wasn't what I was expecting. When you say marine biologist, you're like thinking about traveling to like tropical places and swimming with dolphins and things like that. But I realized there was a lot of dissection involved,
Mhm.
on animals and things like that.
How was the 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 interaction with the salon dynamics? Would you go there? Would you spend time there? Um, and up until what age do you have that closeness to that side of the industry?
So I worked in a salon from when I was about 13 till when I was about 16, which was awesome, and really kind of gave me a sense of character, I think. It
Hmm.
was like um, you just had to have quite a lot of confidence to work in that industry.
Hmm.
You're, working with people who are very confident themselves, have a great sense of who they are and things like that. So yeah, it was something that really kind of built a lot of character in who I am.
And why didn't you decide to go into beauty specifically? What made you to go to fashion photography? If I'm not mistaken, that was the first step, right, in your career.
Well, actually, as part of my school, we had to choose a design course. So you had like woodworking or electronics or cooking, something to do with kind of like creativity. And I chose to do textiles because it seemed like the easiest one to do. So for the first few months when I started doing textiles, I was just kind of messing around, and I was sat with a group of people that we didn't really care about the course. We were just there to kind of have fun. But as I was working, I was really, really enjoying it. And my teacher saw a lot of potential in kind of what I was doing, my designs and things. And she made a really big effort to move me away from those people. She isolated me and made me focus on my work. And at the time, it was like kind of horrible at first. But then I realized, actually, I really, really love this. I started going to after school programs for the textiles, and she turned around and said to me, do you want to do science or do you want to work in fashion? Really think about it. And I had already been accepted to um, college and things like that for science. Um, and and I changed my mind at the last minute. I moved to an art school. I got accepted there, which was amazing. And yeah, I just completely flipped and just went down the route of being an artist, being creative. And at first I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to do, I thought, oh, I was going to do fashion design.
Mhm.
I also love comic illustration. And when I arrived at college, I thought they were going to be like super supportive and teach me what I kind of needed. But actually, I turned up and they told me my artwork was rubbish, and that comic illustration was an art, and all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
again, I just had this realization. I was like, oh, well, this is just school 2.0.
Mm.
This is like not what I thought it was. So I ended up being really like never really at college. I was
Mm.
almost kicked out because I was skipping it so much. I
Mhm.
would rather just stay at home and focus on my own photography, focus on my own drawing. I had a real sense of my own direction,
Mhm.
and I knew that I had a vision, and that I was never going to get there by being in education.
Yeah.
So I left college at 18,
Mhm.
and I was self-employed from that day.
That's amazing. And it's so powerful how we find people that can have that influence on us, like your teacher, and such an impact. Because otherwise, I mean, God knows where would you be and in which direction. Probably you would still be where you are, but probably in a bit of a longer path. How was that move into being self-employed? How hard was it to get those first jobs? Did you start it? Did you start as self-employed as a photographer, or do you try something else?
At that point, I was doing photography and some retouching. I was retouching for photographers in America and things like that. And at first, it was, it was slightly difficult. I had some regular clients. I started to shoot different kind of people. I had some very weird experiences
Like
with
what?
photography. uh, just getting involved with some stuff that I decided I didn't really want to be involved with. Older women that had websites and things like that. Um so the jobs were kind of really, really varied and different, but a lot of people really, really liked my style, and especially really liked my retouching style. I think that's
Mhm.
where I stood out from most photographers, is that I was really, really good at retouching. It's something
Mhm.
that I took a lot of time over, and it's something that I had a lot of pride in. So at first things were okay. I moved to London. I really, really struggled for a year. I lived, an incredibly hard existence in London, living off of like 50p a day, like
Mm. Mhm.
buying a loaf of bread and trying to make it last 3 days, like literally just eating toast. Like the struggle in London was real, and I didn't realize how hard it would be
Mhm.
to kind of just sustain yourself from your own passion,
Mhm.
from what you do. But um I left after a year. I really, really didn't want to leave, but actually it turned out to be the best thing for me.
Mhm.
I went home, I gathered my kind of strength again. I built up a better portfolio.
Mhm.
I got a photography agent, and I moved to London again, and I was there for five years until I left photography at the end of when I left London.
This is really amazing and inspiring. And I, of course, read about you, saw your TED Talk, which I recommend to everyone because it's great. And you do, after some time, after 10 years, you do leave photography, fashion photography, to start what would become the digitals. But what I hear now is kind of like this, almost as a culture of reinventing yourself.
Mhm.
It happened at school that you switched from one course to the other, left, went to London, came back. Almost, it sounds very tough, but also very, you know, there's a lot of resilience there. Do you feel like this is something that you have cultivated on purpose? Is it embedded on you? It's coming from your family. Have you noticed it?
It was something that had to happen when I was in London. It was just something that I realized over a period of time. I had to change everything.
Mm,
I had gotten to a point where I was so disenfranchised with my work. I really hated what I was doing,
mm-hmm,
and in the process also became incredibly depressed. There were
mm,
suicidal thoughts, things like that, and I decided that I was gonna kill off who I was.
mm,
I was gonna kill that person and move on and become somebody different,
mm-hmm,
somebody else, somebody who was happier, somebody who enjoyed what they're doing, somebody who had some kind of impact. I
mm-hmm.
felt like my work as a photographer was in someone's hand one day and then in the bin the next.
Mhm.
It wasn't I wanted people to hang my work on their wall, and I had something to say and I had a
Yeah.
vision, and not following that was destroying me.
Yeah.
So I took the step back. I gave away literally all of my belongings, and I moved back home with my mum again. Um, and at first I thought that I was going to save my money and run away and live on some tropical island in the middle of the Caribbean. But I kind of started to think about what was important to me. And going back home when I was, in my late 20s and spending time with my family who were now all grown up, I have siblings who are 10 years younger than me. I realized that what was making me happy was my family and my
Mm.
home.
Mhm.
And I had this new appreciation for where I come from in Weymouth in Dorset. Um, I just found it incredibly beautiful here. I found it really settling here.
Mhm.
And I kind of realized that, everywhere around the world is going to have its issues. Everywhere around the world is going to have things that I, don't like about it or something. But there's no real place like home and
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my mum's cancer returned at that time as well. So it kind of forced me to just want to spend time with her as much as
Mhm.
possible. Um, and then after a few years of being home, I found 3D. And that is when I began, you know, to be inspired again. It was my like
Mhm.
mini renaissance, like
Mhm.
um, everyone thought I'd kind of gone a bit mad because I was making like 3D donuts and hanging towels and stuff and all of this like 3D things that I
Yeah.
think they were like, you left photography to do this sort of thing. So I was just began to be really, really inspired again, and it really set off the beginning of something that was totally unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to that in a second, but I wanna, talk about something that you said earlier, which is basically you were in a loop that many people find themselves in, thinking I'm not happy at where I am. And you were at this extreme of that loop basically. But a lot of people do not take a step and do not have the courage to do something, or not the courage, but probably don't know what to do. And what was the trigger for you to say, I need to stop and I need to stop now?
For me, I had so many feelings of guilt for a long time about not wanting to be a photographer anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I had this incredible career. I had this flat in London, this life that I felt so many people would be grateful for, and here I was complaining and
Mm-hmm.
and upset and depressed. And there was so much guilt attached to that. I felt that I should just shut up and get on with it and, you know, do this job because so many other people would want it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it got so bad, it got to the point where, you know, I had to call Samaritans. I had to, you know, speak to people about
Mm-hmm.
my depression and thoughts that I was having. Um, and I was just incredibly, incredibly sad, you know, and it just got, yeah, it just got to the point where I had to do something, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
had to change my life. Um, and if I didn't, you know, you know, I have no idea what could have happened, but you know, it was just an incredibly difficult time, and London can be very isolating, especially as a photographer. You know, you're often moving from one job to the next, and your jobs can be quite spread out. Where in comparison to say like a makeup artist, they tend to work quite regularly, doing
Mm-hmm.
lots and lots of different jobs. So I found myself, you know, often quite isolated, retouching through the night. You know, my lifestyle wasn't really social and it wasn't very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it just got to the point where it had to change. There was
Mm-hmm.
no other choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think many of us, I include myself in it, we've been in similar situations where we just need to get help and talk about those things that we're feeling. There is so much guilt, as you say, of not wanting to do something that seems, that it makes sense to others. Um, but then I guess your world just, flipped when you found 3D and computer graphics, and you taught yourself how to do it. Do you still do it? Are you still hands on into designing the models, and or are you have a team? What is the setup that you have now?
The setup is the same from when I first began. So I work with my best friend, which is
Hmm.
great. I work with Tom. He is an incredible artist. He has a background in photography. We went to college together. Um, we learned DAZ 3D together, which is the program I use to create characters. He has gone on to specialize in 3D fashion and styling and dressing the models,
Hmm.
whereas I have kind of focused on the photography aspect, the lighting, the makeup, you know, the overall kind of creative look of things, is generally what I specialize in. So we've kind of gone in different directions, but still very, very working together. I'm incredibly hands-on. I was offered in the beginning lots of investment and things
Mm.
like that, but I never wanted to scale. That was very
Hmm.
important to me.
Hmm.
I didn't want to be, you know, CEO of a huge company pumping out digital models left, right, and center, having to take on jobs I didn't enjoy because I had people to repay, you know, or I was working under someone. I wanted to be very much in control of what I do, and I wanted my characters to be a piece of art. You know, I
Mm.
wanted them to be individual, one of a kind, rare. You know, I wanted people to be like, we got Cameron Wilson to design our model. You know, like,
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Absolutely, yeah.
you know, like, and that's what I miss with my photography. And um, you know, I really really enjoy my work life.
Hmm.
It's just me, Tom. My dad handles the account and things like that.
Really.
Um,
Amazing.
I have my management team in America, so I have managers in America who Jennifer Powell, she has her own company called JP Inc. who represents some incredible talent. And she's really, really helped me as well. So she
Hmm.
deals with all of the contracts and money and stuff like that. All the things that creatives hate to deal with,
Yeah.
she handles. Um, so yeah, so I love my life, and I think it was really important for me to, you know, forge my own path, and just be this little kind of boutique creative agency, you know.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so refreshing. I mean, it is so easy to just let yourself go for what you should be doing. And taking in outside investment, it is sometimes what is presented as what you should do. And
Mhm.
sometimes even associated with this is a successful route. But so it is really refreshing to hear you say that you have proactively selected this, which it does fit and makes absolute sense. Has that changed in the last few years? Maybe after the pandemic, when you got a little bit of more demand, I would imagine. Um, have you reconsidered that, or have you thought of taking a different approach?
Never really. I don't ever see myself wanting to scale,
Mm,
really. I just don't. I like the way that we work, and I like being able to pick the jobs that I want to work on. Um and I think this is great for me. I am always looking at different avenues as well. So it's not just about the digitals. I am thinking kind of behind the scenes about different ideas.
mm-hmm,
Just as a creative, I think we all have
mm-hmm,
them.
absolutely.
I don't think we can help that. And also it keeps you inspired.
Yeah.
But as a business, I'm just very, very happy. I think it's been incredibly valuable to be a small team because we can grow our team depending on the project. So although it's just me and Tom, when we work on a different project, we might hire a different team for certain things. So we might bring on a team that specializes in creating, 3D fashion, like Studio Achi in Brazil. Or we might bring in an animation team or, things like that. And it's allowed us to be incredibly flexible.
Mm-hmm,
So over the years, as we've seen, these trends in technology from NFTs to the metaverse to AI, we've been able to remain extremely flexible and change and shift depending on what that year's trend is, and we've been able to keep up with those things and benefit every single year from these things. So I'm not sure how we would have done that so easily if we were much bigger. Right now we've completely shifted to focusing on kind of like AI content creation and things like that, and we're able to do that because of the small size.
yeah, absolutely. That is extremely smart, especially like you said, you are scaling in a different way. You're scaling in skills and offerings, which is really what matters today as things are changing so fast. um I'm very curious. In my mind, and from what I've read, Shuru is being treated as another model potentially, right? So there is management, she's booked. How is that process, and how is the people receiving that on the other on the end of the client? Do they always know that Shuru is a digital model? How's that interaction?
Our clients are always 100% aware that they're booking a digital model and they really want a digital model. That's
Hmm.
the thing. I think a lot of people don't realize that when our clients come to us, they have already have in mind that they want a virtual influencer.
Hmm.
So when people say, oh, you're competing with jobs with real models, and it's not really true because whether or not Shudu takes the job, that client is generally going to hire a virtual influencer,
Hmm.
that they have it set in their mind that that's what they want. And it's usually because they have something within that campaign that ties into, virtual influencers, whether it be the metaverse or NFTs or 3D fashion or, anything like that. It's something that they want to really illustrate
Hmm.
with using a virtual influencer. So it's actually tied into the creative process. So we're never really competing with jobs with real models. We're kind of like a plus.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're kind of like, from what I've seen is, with the brands that I work with, they'll do their usual marketing, hiring
Hmm.
real people like they usually do, but they've added on virtual influencers. It's
Hmm.
kind of like an extra step now, um, which is really interesting, and I love that creatives like myself are able to make money doing that in this
Hmm.
industry.
Hmm. That is a very interesting way to see it, and it makes sense to see it as separate worlds, basically, which I think you're making me see that right now, and it makes sense. There is no way that you would bring a real model to metaverse or Roblox situation. It just doesn't fit. Um, have you talked to real models, and do they understand this? What is the reaction that you get?
So we actually work with real models all the time.
Hmm.
We have a program of what we call muses, and they are a group of real models who can step into the shoes of our digital influencers when we need them to. So there are certain scenarios when we really require a virtual influencer. Generally, if the job is paid, we will do our best to work with a real model, as we believe that we should use this technology ethically,
Mm-hmm.
and give back to the community that I was inspired from. I love models as much as I fell out of love with photography. I still very much love working with real models and things like that. So giving back to the community that Shudu represents, that she was inspired by, is really, really important. And I believe that we can do this ethically. We
Mm-hmm.
have a choice when we're using virtual influencers, when we're using 3D, when we're using AI. We have a choice whether or not to do it the quick and cheap way or the right way,
Mm.
or the ethical way, the honest and transparent way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we still work with real models, and the ones that we work with really, really love it.
Mm.
They understand the process. They understand me. They've gotten to know who I am. They've gotten to know why I created Shudu and why I'm doing what I do. So for them, um, they have this great understanding. But there are some models that perhaps don't know enough about me or
Mm.
have been misled by certain media, um, that say that I want to, capitalize off this, or this is all about money, or
Mm-hmm.
other things, that obviously are concerned about the future of their jobs. And there are so many models out there who aren't quite making enough or getting booked enough, especially models from, Black community
Mm.
or models of color, are really, really struggling to get jobs. And, they see me, they see Shudu as kind of a threat to that. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I also understand, their feelings as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it is also very. I love how you say they don't know me, and that speaks a lot to also what you're creating as a company. What you said earlier about staying small, because it is you're infusing your values into it in the most direct way that you can, which is I. This is what I stand for, and I remember from the interviews that I've seen from you that there was an interview that was particularly um, yeah difficult because it portrayed you as not what you were. um how do you dealt with that? How do you deal with that personally? And yeah, what is the status of that perception, public perception today?
So when Shudu really went viral, a lot of people didn't know that she was a digital model. And for a while, I thought this was absolutely insane. I thought this was crazy that people didn't know that my work was 3D. I just started doing 3D, so I was like about 3 months in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd only been doing it for 3 or 4 months, and for somebody to not be able to distinguish your work from reality as a 3D artist, that's something that blows you away.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really huge compliment. That's what
Mm-hmm.
everybody tries to achieve as a 3D artist, really, is realism. So I kind of didn't say anything for a while, and I kept posting pictures of Shudu, and people really thought that she was a real person. And at first it was amusing, and flattering, but then it slowly became worrying, and
Mm-hmm.
it slowly became concerning that there was this technology out there that was readily available to me, somebody who hadn't even been doing it this long,
Mm-hmm.
that could deceive people like this, that could
Mm-hmm.
be used to create imagery that was deceiving.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to tell people about who I was, that Shudu wasn't real, why I had created her. At the time, I had no idea that she was going to become a viral sensation.
Mm-hmm.
I just was creating a beautiful woman. So when when all of this happened, I didn't really have any control over it. I wasn't trying to make this go viral. I was sharing this with my friends. Um, so when it came out that Shudu wasn't real and that I was behind her, um, Harper's Bazaar did an interview with me, which unfortunately got taken and twisted by kind of Twitter and a few other
Mm-hmm.
places to make it seem that I'd created Shudu purely to profit off of the community, the Black community, and the rise of, at that time, Sudanese models. There was this really big trend for, um, well, that's what they said, that I said that it was like a trend. But it really was in fashion. There was a rise of diversity in Black models, and a lot of them were Sudanese. And a lot of people thought that I'd created Shudu to kind of profit off of that, um, which totally wasn't true, and it was very, very hurtful at the beginning. And it really got to the point where I had this wave of hate, like
Mm.
literal wave of hate. And I had no training of how to deal with this.
Mm.
I was literally living in a cabin in my mama's garden. Like, I only had my sisters to talk to who were like, you know, 18 and 20 at the time.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know how to deal with it. Like
Yeah.
I had just began doing something that I really, really loved and enjoyed, and I just created this beautiful image that I was so proud of. And in the blink of an eye, it was twisted into something so against what I believe in. You know, it was
Mhm.
turned into something racist. It was turned into blackface. I was accused of being a minstrel by
That's
by the New
horrible.
Yorker. Like all of these horrific things that like were completely not who I was, you know,
Mm.
and not what I created Shudu for or about. You know, Shudu
Mhm.
is a love letter to people that have inspired me throughout my life. You know,
That's
she
beautiful.
is you know, and I really I thought people would see that in the fact that she's so beautiful. I thought people would understand that it must have come from a place of love.
Mm.
If it had come from a place of hate or anything, Shudu would never be as beautiful as she is, you know?
Mm.
Um, so it was very, very difficult to deal with that. It was just incredibly hurtful. And it went on for years, you know, and it still comes up
Oh, really?
now and then. But it never sticks because as soon as I get kind of in front of it, as soon as I start talking and people hear my past and hear why I created Shudu, they realize, you know, that what everything, you know, all this other stuff is not true, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it never really, really stuck with me, because my intent behind Shudu, I think you know, comes from a place of appreciation.
Mm.
And I want to do this ethically, and I want to educate people about 3D
Mm.
and now AI.
Mhm.
And I can only really do that by being involved with those industries.
Yeah, and I think that working with the actual models, like you said, with your muses, that says it all, right? And you're going beyond of what you know what the job that you're doing is. You're going way beyond. So that's amazing, and I'm glad that you are speaking out and clarifying who you are, which is what's the essence of what you're doing. And speaking of media, we got to talk about Rihanna and Fenty Beauty. How was that? So she reposted, or the team reposted one of Shuru's pictures for Fenty Beauty. How crazy is that? And how was it? I mean, did they contact you before? Did you chat with them afterwards? Tell me about that moment.
So right at the beginning of kind of Shudu's career, um I was creating these images on social media on Instagram, and like I said, people weren't truly aware that she was a digital model. You know, I was wondering, when are they going to figure this out? Um, and my sister mentioned to me, she said, you know, you should really do something with Fenty because they stand for diversity and inclusion. And, you know, their campaign is so successful. And she said that they had been reposting people who were wearing the product.
Mm.
So I found this beautiful color online, and tried my best to recreate that lipstick on Shudu, which for me was a real interesting challenge as well. Like,
Hmm.
could you make images of makeup using 3D? Um, and then I posted it to Instagram and tagged Rihanna and Fenty and everything. Then I woke up the next day, and you know she'd reposted it, or Fenty had reposted it, and it got to about 235,000 likes when
Oh
I
my
checked it.
God.
Um, and it was just incredible. You know, the comments were going, you know, crazy. People didn't know what to make of it. You know,
Yeah.
is this real? Is this not? Um, and that was when Harper's Bazaar reached out to me. They wanted to know
Okay.
the truth, and I was ready to kind of say, you
Yeah.
know, that Shudu wasn't real. I think it kind of peaked at that point. So yeah, it was really amazing, but it was also, again, it was very kind of there was this underlying concern,
Mm,
that this post that so many people were liking
mm-hmm,
w- wasn't a real person,
mm,
and a lot of people in the comments didn't know that and couldn't tell that. And
mm,
that was, something that I think could be deceiving, and
mm-hmm,
I do think that people should be aware of that. So there was this kind of need, I think, to bring awareness to that and be transparent to be able to educate people.
mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds very familiar when we talk about generative AI these days, right? I mean, now we're talking a lot more about being transparent about when it's being used and when it's not. But in the start of the year, late last year, that was the situation. It was a very deceiving technology, that and still is at at a big degree in terms of the quality that we're getting. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Um, and when you said earlier that when you started 3D was such you know an available and technology, and there was this concern of like how this person that just learned how to use it now has this power to create and deceive. um do you feel like that's a situation with generative AI? Are those your views? What are your views?
I think we're really moving into a new era of what we see isn't necessarily what is true, and I think that we all need to be more educated about what technology can do, so that we can look out for telltale signs of the use of AI and make sure that we're doing our own kind of background checks on kind of things that we're looking at to make sure that they are real. And I think this has been a concern of mine from the beginning, from 2017 when it was 3D. There were already kind of whispers of like deep fakes and things like that at
Hmm.
that time. Um, so, I kind of always knew that 3D plus AI was going to be this special recipe for crossing the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
I think 3D, as no matter how good it is, it tends to fall somewhere in the uncanny valley, whether
Hmm.
it's almost kind of escaping it, but I think it's still always there with 3D.
Hmm.
However, when you add AI into the mix and kind of overlay it and kind of bring this sort of hyper realism to it, I think it can be indistinguishable from a real picture. And I think 99% of people with certain cases would never be able to tell the difference between an
Hmm.
image created with AI and 3D than a real image. So I think for me, I think that's something that people should really, really be aware of. I have no issue telling people that my work isn't real. I think that's actually part of the wonder of it. I think that's
Yeah.
part of the amazing thing about it. When I go and see a film like Avatar or anything like that, I know that those characters aren't real. I know that there's not blue people on some planet somewhere.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from the magic.
Yeah.
In fact, the magic is looking at it and being like, "Wow, I can't believe that isn't real."
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's where I want my work to be.
Yeah.
There's something honest in that. There's something transparent about that. So when I see people not declaring that their work is utilizing 3D or AI, I find that incredibly troubling.
Mm.
There are other virtual influencers out there who aren't declaring, who's behind them. They're not as
Hmm.
open about how they were created. They even use incorrect terminology when referring to themselves. Like they call themselves robots or
Mm.
AI influencers, which is can be now because of generative AI, but they tend to mean that they're created by an AI. It's a
Right.
bit different.
Yeah.
Um, and I find that to be very deceptive as well.
No, I find this way of looking at it very honest and also very sustainable in the sense of that's a world that where I can see myself and an industry thriving. Otherwise, a world of you know art that is deceiving, that's just not, it's going to implode at some point. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. And but now speaking of about the technology itself, how are you using it today? Because someone could argue, well, if I go to Midjourney, I could create a digital model. And what's your take on it? And competition, but also how you personally use it.
So, at the moment, one of the biggest issues with AI is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And that is incredibly important when creating a character that, especially brands, they want to own that IP. And owning the IP of a completely AI generated character is actually quite difficult. So one of the ways that we work is to create a 3D version of that character. So we still work with 3D to create the characters, and that way we can ensure that the brand has complete ownership over that 3D model and the IP that kind of comes with it. We then train a specific AI model with images of that 3D model.
Mm-hmm.
So then we basically clone that 3D model into AI. And what that allows us to do is skip the rendering process. So we no
Mm-hmm.
longer, once we've done the training, we no longer have to render those images, which can take days to kind of
Mm-hmm.
set up the scene and do all of the lighting and all of that. So then we're able to generate images, within minutes of this character. And then we can also take that image and run it through. I used to use Stable Diffusion, but now we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at things like Magnific AI. And what that does is it upscales it
Mm-hmm.
and also adds lifelike details like skin texture and things like that. So what you end up with is a very, very consistent character that has, really, really lifelike details, that has all of the benefits of AI, but also the benefits of 3D and the IP ownership behind that. And of course, if anything ever changes with AI, different models and stuff like that, you always can fall back to that 3D model and
Mm-hmm.
you can always retrain from there.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows you to kind of be flexible with that. Some people may lose their characters, once Midjourney moves to like version 6 or something. It might have a
Mm-hmm.
slightly different style, and it might not output that character the same way and things like that. So I think you have to be very, very careful when investing in a purely AI model.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we like to kind of build a real foundation. What we're looking at in the future is building a 3D character, training an AI model on 3D images, creating enough good quality AI images, and then retraining
Mm-hmm.
the AI on those AI images
Yeah.
to become even more lifelike and realistic. So um, it's a real process. The character creation in itself is a process that takes about 6 to 8 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
trying to create the 3D model. And it's a very, very in-depth process. But at the end of it, you have something that can last forever.
Yeah.
This is something that can stay with a brand for a very, very long time. And you can build a social media following, and you can plan for not just 1 year. This is something that I hope people are thinking about for decades to come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, this approach bring to brands what they really need, which is, like you said, not only the IP ownership, but also being able to um, control the content that they are outputting. Because I mean, anyone that has prompted something in Midjourney or DALI, you know that you cannot fully control it, and I think that is basically what you describe. Your process is the difference between being a prompt engineer and being this agency that actually makes sure that you are compliant to clients' requests. It goes beyond just being like a fun, creating like a fun picture, right? So I think that does make a lot of sense. Are clients coming to you with usually requests to use your the models that you have in your portfolio, or is it common for them to request a completely new model?
It's about 50-50, to be honest. So the majority of our clients really are interested in having their own AI influencer or virtual influencer, or whatever term they kind of come to us with. And it's our job to educate them about the process, about what's required, and about the future of what it looks like to maintain a virtual influencer. There's a lot of
Mm,
maintenance that goes into their social media and upkeep and things like that. Just generating the content as well. However, we do get a lot of requests for both editorials, so
Mhm.
things like magazine editorials and things like that, and also, social media posts and brand deals and sponsorship and things like that. So it's a mix between kind of like a modeling agency and a creative agency. We deal with lots and lots of different requests. Every job that we ever do is like usually very different, and it comes with its own unique challenges.
Mhm.
And that's another reason why it's beneficial for us to keep a small core team, is because with each job we're able to change who we work with, and really, really get the client the specialists they need to achieve the results that they want. Which I think is much better than trying to shoehorn requests into, a large team, but, a team that has, varied specialities.
No, that makes sense. I think the whole strategy of having this small, flexible team, absolutely amazing. I think it's fantastic and super smart. Want to start wrapping it up by asking you a bit more about your, what are the challenges of having such a small team and also working with your best friend? Co-founder dynamics are complex on its own, but how is it when it is your best friend you're working with?
Working with Tom has been amazing. We've been friends for a very, very long time. It has a lot of challenges personally, just being able to communicate directly with him in a way that um, transcends our friendship and
Hmm.
is more professional. I think I often worry a lot about things that I maybe wouldn't if we didn't have that relationship, and it can be hard sometimes to be critical when you really, really, really care about somebody's feelings and
Hmm.
you care about them as a person, so it throws up so many different complexities from that point of view. But at the end of the day, they're complexities because I care.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important, and if, I think it would be a shame if I didn't care, and I think that would in itself be problematic. So we work around them, we talk and we have that foundation of friendship, which is great. And we really, really love and are inspired by what we do. And I think that's really, really important, and I think also Tom knows that I want the best for him,
Hmm.
as well. And I think, that's a really rare thing for a boss to care that much about, you and and
Yeah.
everything like that. So it can be challenging. I've worked with other members of my family before. I still work with my dad, who kind of oversees the accounting and kind of helps me get around if I need to get to talks or do certain things. He's there to really help assist me. I also worked with my sister for a while. She was my personal assistant for a year. Um, which I think is really, really important. It comes down to this core value of
Mm.
why I moved back to Weymouth and why I gave up photography. I
Mhm.
want to spend more time with the people that I love. I
Mhm.
want to spend more time with the people that I care about. And I know that that reflects in my work.
Mhm.
I as an artist, your emotional state is incredibly important to your work. It transfers so much. If I'm in a good mood and I'm taking, a client pitch, we're pitching to a client or a really important meeting, I know that I will come across, much, much better if I'm in that good mood. And I'm
Mhm.
in that mood because I'm surrounded by people who care for me and want the best for me,
Mhm.
so um, it's really, really important, and when I do these talks and things like that, I generally have somebody there who understands me very, very, very well, whether it's my dad, my best friend, or my sister, or, something. They understand me and they're able to keep me, feeling confident and
Mhm.
happy and positive. Um, so, that is, as a creative, is incredibly important. And it's not something that I see in business all the time. I when I started to work with technology, the thing that I heard all the time was scale.
Mhm. Mhm.
Scale, scale, scale. how do you get this in everyone's hands? How do you become, the next tech millionaire or billionaire
Mhm.
or things like
Mhm.
that? And it's very enticing, but it's not for me.
Mhm.
Uh I just, I want to just be able to wake up and enjoy what I do, and but at the same time change the world. And I think I've been able to do both, which
Yeah,
is insane to me.
absolutely. This is extremely inspiring to me because, and I'm being very honest, sometimes we do hear and we see talks and we hear podcasts with people that have done great things, but it's sometimes hard to relate, and also it can be a bit frustrating to only see the good side of things. But in your case, your journey has not been easy, and there's a lot of strength in you from what I see, and that is one of the things that I really admire. But also the strength to say what is it that you want, and walk that path. It is a big one. um Dealing with those pressures of this is what you should be doing. And I don't want to ask you how you do it again, because it sounds to me that it is something that is just embedded in you. um but it is one of the toughest things to do for me today, until this day. So it is impressive how you kept on doing that along the journey, and probably better and better. um Beyond that, is there a key lesson or value that you've embraced that guides your life, or maybe even a technique, so that you are always in this path of following staying true to your values?
I think for me, it's really about a quality of life and pride in what I do.
Mm,
I really want to be proud of the work that I'm doing, and I think some of the projects that I've worked on have made me feel incredible, pride in not only my ability, but just the people that I'm working with and the projects that I'm involved with. It's I worked with Down Syndrome International to create the world's first virtual influencer with Down syndrome, and that for me was an incredible process that opened my eyes to something that I may not have ever been aware of had I not taken that project on.
mhm,
Understanding that this whole community of people are being excluded from these technological advancements like the metaverse and gaming. They're not able to create avatars that look like themselves.
yeah.
They're not able to see themselves represented in this space. And I found that incredibly sad and disheartening, because when we think of the future, we think of things like inclusivity and
Mm,
representation. But when we actually dive into 3D and the metaverse and things, and even AI, we're seeing that it's actually excluding the
mhm,
huge groups of people. There are many, many issues in AI with the exclusion of women and the exploitation of women.
mhm,
When it comes to 3D fashion, we see old beauty tropes, reviving themselves. I see a lot of 3D fashion designers using bodies that are way too thin,
mhm,
and not diverse. And when we look at the metaverse, is it really that accessible for many, many different people
mhm,
from different backgrounds? And can people like the Down syndrome community really see themselves reflected in these space? There are so many challenges, and again, with AI, you have like racial bias and beauty biases all embedded into this program because it was created by us.
yeah.
And it has all of our awful mistakes embedded in it, entwined in it. Um, so for me, it's about challenging that and wanting to change that,
Mhm,
and doing as best I can to show people that something can be done, that you can kind of stand up for that. And also just being a person in this space, being who I am in this space. I,
mhm,
I grew up not seeing a lot of people like me.
mhm,
I don't see a lot of people like me at all in technology.
mhm,
Um, and, I think maybe there's a smaller version of me out there um, that might appreciate seeing someone like me in this space.
mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's an amazing way to wrap it up as well. And with that message of and the work that you're doing. So I honestly, Cameron, I'm a fan. I mean, the work that you've done, your journey, but most importantly, how you're sticking to your values and creating a successful business out of those values, because you are your business, and your values are your business in the most literal way. It's an absolute inspiration. So I'm so glad that we had this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.